April 1943. The Pacific War was raging, and America had just scored a major victory at Guadalcanal. But the fight was far from over. The Japanese Empire still had one man whose name struck fear across the ocean, Admiral Isoroku Yamamoto. He wasn't just Japan's top admiral. He was the mastermind behind the attack on Pearl Harbor, the architect of Japan's strategy in the Pacific, and the symbol of Japanese naval power. For the United States, Yamamoto wasn't just an enemy commander. He was the enemy. What if I told you that America carried out one of the most daring missions of World War II? A mission designed not to destroy a fleet, not to capture territory, but to kill a single man. This was Operation Vengeance, the top-secret mission where U.S. pilots were sent deep behind enemy lines with one objective: to shoot down Yamamoto's plane. In this video, we'll uncover how American cryptographers intercepted Yamamoto's travel plans, how a squadron of P-38 Lightning fighters was chosen for the impossible task, and how one of the most legendary aerial ambushes in history changed the course of the Pacific War. Subscribe now for more untold war stories, and let's dive into the secret mission that took down Japan's most powerful admiral. The story of Operation Vengeance is one of the most daring missions of World War II, a mission that combined intelligence, precision, and sheer determination to strike at the very heart of the Japanese war machine. It begins not in the cockpit of a fighter plane, but in the shadowy world of signals intelligence, where men in headphones and code books work tirelessly to unlock the enemy's secrets. By 1943, American cryptographers had successfully broken into Japan's JN-25 naval code, a complex cipher that carried the most sensitive communications of the Imperial Navy. The work was painstaking, with fragments of messages intercepted, analyzed, and reconstructed into meaningful intelligence. This secret war of information was just as decisive as the battles being fought on land and sea. And in April of that year, these codebreakers uncovered something extraordinary, an itinerary that revealed the movements of none other than Admiral Isoroku Yamamoto, the commander-in-chief of the Japanese combined fleet. Yamamoto was no ordinary officer. He was the mastermind behind the attack on Pearl Harbor, the man who had dragged the United States into war with a single devastating strike. To the Japanese, he was a national hero, a brilliant strategist who had once studied in America and understood its industrial power better than most of his peers. To Americans, he was the embodiment of the enemy, the architect of December 7th. The intercepted message detailed Yamamoto's inspection tour of forward bases in the Solomon Islands. It even listed his exact flight plan, the type of aircraft he would travel in, and the times of departure and arrival. Yamamoto was famously punctual, so precise that his staff joked he would rather die than be late. That trait, combined with the intelligence breakthrough, made him a predictable target. The discovery ignited fierce debate within the American command. Was it ethical to target and kill an enemy commander in such a deliberate way? Some argued it would be nothing less than assassination. Others insisted that Yamamoto was no different from any other target of war. President Franklin Roosevelt is often credited with making the decision himself, reportedly saying, "Get Yamamoto." Once the order was given, there was no turning back. The mission was to go ahead, and it would be one of the boldest gambits of the entire conflict. Planning the mission was a monumental challenge. The location of the interception was nearly 400 miles from the nearest American base at Guadalcanal, deep inside Japanese-controlled territory. To reach the target, the chosen aircraft would need exceptional range and speed. The U.S. settled on the Lockheed P-38 Lightning, a twin-engine fighter unlike anything else in the skies. With its long range, heavy firepower, and distinctive twin-boom design, the P-38 could carry the extra fuel tanks necessary for the mission. Even so, the flight would push the aircraft to their absolute limits. Every mile, every drop of fuel, every minute of time had to be calculated with meticulous precision. 16 P-38s were selected, with 4 of them assigned as the Killer Group, to attack Yamamoto's bomber, while the others would serve as cover against Japanese fighters. The pilots trained intensively, memorizing maps and flight paths, rehearsing fuel management, and preparing for the most dangerous mission of their lives. The success of Operation Vengeance hinged on timing. If they were early, they risked being spotted. If they were late, Yamamoto would already be gone. Everything depended on arriving at the exact right moment, 9:35 a.m., when his plane was scheduled to land at Bougainville. On the morning of April 18, 1943, the mission began. At dawn, the 16 P-38s roared off the runway at Guadalcanal, their engines heavy with fuel and weapons. For over 2 hours, they flew low, hugging the surface of the ocean to avoid detection by Japanese radar. The pilots sat in silence, eyes fixed on their compasses and stopwatches, fully aware that one mistake could send them hopelessly off course. The tension was unbearable, but the formation held. At 9:34 a.m., almost to the second, the Americans reached the interception point near Bougainville. Rising into the sky ahead of them, just as predicted, was a formation of 2 Mitsubishi G4M Betty bombers, escorted by 6 Zero fighters. Yamamoto was in one of those bombers. The trap had worked perfectly. The Americans wasted no time. Captain Thomas Lanphier and Lieutenant Rex Barber, flying in the lead, dove toward the enemy formation. The escorting Zeros reacted quickly, but they were caught off guard. Lanphier fired a burst into a Zero, sending it spiraling into the sea. Barber aimed at one of the Betty bombers. His guns shredded the fuselage, smoke pouring from its engines as it lurched downward. That bomber carried Admiral Yamamoto. Witnesses later reported that the plane crashed into the jungle, breaking apart and scattering wreckage among the trees. Yamamoto's body was found still strapped to a seat, his hand resting on his sword. The architect of Pearl Harbor was dead. The second bomber tried to flee, diving and weaving to escape. It was pursued relentlessly. Though damaged, it managed to crash land, with some survivors crawling from the wreckage. The Americans had achieved their objective. Yamamoto was gone, and Japan had lost its most brilliant naval strategist. The mission was a triumph of intelligence, planning, and execution, but it also became a source of controversy. Both Lanphier and Barber claimed to have fired the shots that brought down Yamamoto's bomber. The argument between them lasted for decades, dividing veterans and historians. For years, official credit went to Lanphier, but later evidence and eyewitness accounts favored Barber. In 1991, the U.S. Air Force revised its records to acknowledge Barber as the man who most likely delivered the fatal blow. Yet, even today, some still argue about who truly deserves the honor. For Japan, Yamamoto's death was devastating. The news was initially suppressed, with the government fearing the impact on morale. But within weeks, the loss could not be hidden. Yamamoto was mourned in a massive state funeral, his ashes carried home in solemn procession. To the Japanese people, it was not only the loss of a great commander, but also the loss of hope. Yamamoto had been the guiding hand of their naval strategy, the man who understood the enemy better than anyone else. Without him, the Japanese Navy was left adrift, unable to match American resources and momentum. Operation Vengeance also carried broader implications. It demonstrated the power of intelligence in modern warfare, the ability to track, predict, and eliminate even the highest-ranking enemy leaders. It blurred the lines between traditional combat and targeted killing, setting a precedent for operations that would echo into the future. In many ways, it was a precursor to the precision strikes of the modern era, when high-value targets are hunted with the aid of surveillance and technology. For the pilots who flew that day, the mission was unforgettable. They had flown farther, risked more, and struck deeper than almost any other mission in the Pacific at that time. When they returned to base, their fuel tanks nearly empty, they were celebrated not only as survivors, but as men who had delivered justice for Pearl Harbor. Some of them would go on to fight in more battles, others would never see the end of the war. But for each, April 18, 1943, would remain the defining moment of their service. In the end, Operation Vengeance was more than just an ambush. It was a calculated strike that changed the course of the Pacific War. By removing Yamamoto, the Americans had struck at the brain of the Japanese Navy. His successors could not match his vision or his charisma, and Japan's ability to wage an effective naval war declined sharply. For the United States, it was proof that even the most elusive enemy could be reached, that the nation could deliver vengeance swiftly and decisively. Operation Vengeance was not just another battle report, not just another page in the endless log of World War II. It was something deeper, a demonstration of how far the United States was willing to go, how precise its intelligence had become, and how deadly its resolve truly was. With one mission, America proved that no enemy, no matter how high-ranking or well-guarded, was beyond reach. For the Japanese, the loss of Admiral Yamamoto was a shock that rippled far beyond the battlefield. He was more than a strategist. He was the symbol of their Navy's confidence, the man who had once warned his own government not to underestimate America's industrial power. His death left a void that no replacement could fill, and in many ways, it marked the beginning of the end for Japan's hopes of controlling the Pacific. For the Americans, the mission became legendary. It was the marriage of cryptography, planning, and raw courage, executed with a precision that bordered on the impossible. Those 16 P-38 pilots who flew across hundreds of miles of open ocean carried not just machine guns and fuel, but the weight of Pearl Harbor, the cries of a wounded nation, and the demand for justice. When Yamamoto's plane fell from the sky, it was more than an ambush. It was closure. History remembers Operation Vengeance not only as a tactical victory, but as a moment of symbolism. It proved that the tides of war had turned, that America had the tools, the will, and the daring to strike back. And above all, it reminded the world that even the most powerful figures are not untouchable when justice comes calling.